Welcome to lecture 7.2 of Python module. In entire 7 lecture, we will be talking about various data type. In lecture 7.1, we have talked about list, and in this lecture 7.2, we will be talking about Python tuple. And then we will be seeing how to create a tuple, how to access elements, how to do slicing, various methods available to us, and how to check if an element exists in tuple or not. So let's begin. A tuple in Python is similar to a list. The difference between the two is that we cannot change the elements of a tuple once it is assigned, whereas we can change the elements of a list. Let's see how to create a tuple. A tuple is created by placing all the items or element inside parentheses separated by commas. The parentheses are optional, however, it is a good practice to use them. A tuple can have any number of items and they may be of different type like integer, float, list, string, etc. So let's see an example of creating a tuple. You can create an empty tuple using this parenthesis sign. So this is also a tuple since we are using parentheses and each element is separated by comma. Since parenthesis is optional, this is also acted as a tuple. This is also a tuple which has different data type like integer, string and float. And this is also a tuple since we have parenthesis, comma, and the data type can be a string, list, tuple itself, etc. So let's print this. And as you can see that the output we are getting are all tuples. Now let's see how to create a Python tuple with one element. In Python, creating a tuple with one element is a bit tricky. Having one element within parentheses is not enough. We will need a trailing comma to indicate that this is a tuple. So for example, here I am creating a variable 1. Inside parentheses, I am writing a string hello. But this will be treated as a string and not tuple. Since only having parentheses is not enough, parentheses is optional in tuple, right? So this will be acted as a string only. But if you are using a comma inside it after one element, now this will be acted as a tuple. And this is also a tuple. Why? Because parenthesis is optional. But you are writing one element and then comma, which indicates that this is a tuple. So when I'm printing this code, you can see that the type of variable 1 is string. But the type of variable 2 and 3, since we are using trailing comma after that, is converted into tuple. Now let's see how to access Python tuple elements. Since tuple is also ordered like list, you can use indexing. In Python, we have zero indexing or negative indexing. Zero indexing, where zeroth index represents the first element, and in negative indexing, -1 represents the last element. Now let's see an example. So here we have created a tuple letter inside parentheses and each item is separated using comma. You can see that our zeroth element is a list. So if I want to access an item inside list, we need to use nested indexing. Therefore, I am writing that inside my tuple, I want to access my zeroth index element, and inside my zeroth index element, I want to access the second index element, which is k in this case. Now, if I want to access the fifth element, I will be simply using indexing using square brackets. Now let's print this. So k and r is our output. Similarly, you can also use negative indexing and also negative nested indexing. So -1 will print m in this case and -8 and then 1. So -8 here represents a list and 1 here represents the 1th value inside the list, which is I. So I will get an output m from this print statement and I will get I from this print statement. So let's run the output. So we got as expected. Now let's see how to do slicing. We can access a range of items in a tuple by using the slicing operator colon. So for example, here we are creating a tuple which has a lot of characters. So now I want to access a portion of this tuple. So instead of using indexing, I need to use slicing, and slicing operator is a colon. Before colon, we write start index, and after colon, we write end index. Start index is inclusive and end index is exclusive. So 1:4 represents an elements starting from 1 till 3. So 1, 2nd and 3rd element will be printed when I'm calling 1 till 4. Similarly, if I'm not mentioning the start index, by default it takes a value from starting. And if I'm not defining the end index, it will take a value by default till end. And if I'm not mentioning the start and end index, it will take all the elements from beginning to the end. So let's run this code. So as you can see, 1 till 4 represents first, second and third element. This represents from start till -6, which is P in this case. This represents from 6 till the end, which is M in this case. And this represents the entire tuple. You can see that in second and third print statement, only one element is getting printed. Therefore, we have one trailing comma as well to represent that this is a tuple. Now let's see various tuple methods available to us. In Python, methods that add item or remove items are not available with tuple. Only the following two methods are available, which is count and index. And why so? Because tuples are immutable. You cannot change tuple. Therefore, you cannot add or delete or remove items from it. So, count method returns the number of times a value has occurred, and index method returns the first index of a value. So for example, here I want to calculate how many times P occurs in my tuple. So it will print me 2. And here I want to calculate what is the index of character L inside my tuple. So it returns me 3 since indexing starts from 0. Now let's see how to iterate through a tuple in a Python. So we use for loop to iterate over a sequence. So here we have created a variable language which iterate over each item inside languages and print it one by one. So let's run this code and you can see that Python, Java and C++ is printed in a new line. Now let's see how to check if an item exists in a Python tuple. And for that we use a membership keyword. So for example, here we have created a tuple languages and I want to check whether C is present inside my tuple. Since it's not present, my membership keyword will return either true or false. It's return boolean value, so it will return me false. And since Python is in languages tuple, it will return me true. So let's run this code and we got the output as expected. Now let's see what are the advantages of tuple over list. Since tuple are quite similar to list, both of them are used in similar situations. However, there are certain advantages of implementing a tuple over list. First, we generally use tuples for heterogeneous or different data type and list for homogeneous data type. We can use heterogeneous data type in list as well, but generally, if we are using heterogeneous list, we will be using tuple, and if we are using homogeneous item, we will be using list. Since tuples are immutable, iterating through a tuple is faster than with a list. So there is a slight performance boost. Tuple that contain immutable elements can be used as a key for a dictionary. With list, this is not possible. If you have data that does not change, implementing it as tuple will guarantee that it remains write protected. So that's all in this video. Let's revise what all we learned. So tuple is similar to list. The only difference is that tuples are immutable. You cannot change tuple. We create tuple using parentheses and each element or item is separated using commas. However, parenthesis is optional and tuple can have different data type and also a list or string inside it. Now to create a Python tuple with one element, you need to use one trailing comma, otherwise it will be acted as a string. To access elements inside tuple, we will be using indexing. You can either go with 0 indexing or negative indexing. And we also have nested indexing if we want to access an element inside list which is inside tuple. We also see how to do slicing. Similar to list, here also we use colon operator for slicing. Start index is inclusive and end index is exclusive if we are not mentioning the start or end index. So for start index, by default it takes beginning, and for end index it takes end as a default. So we also saw the methods available to us inside tuple. Since this is immutable, you cannot add, change, or remove an element. The only methods which you can perform on tuple is either you can count the number of elements inside tuple, or you can find the index of a particular item inside a tuple. You can iterate through a tuple using for loop, and you can check an item inside tuple using the membership operator. And in the end, we saw the advantages of tuple. So we use tuple when we have heterogeneous item. Iterating through a tuple is faster. Since if tuple contain immutable element, we can use them as a key for a dictionary. And if we want a data that does not change, we need to implement in tuple, since it guarantees us that it remains write protected. So that's all in this video. Thank you.